Okay, I'm going to give it one more minute and then we can start. I'm just wanting to give people some time to still log in. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for yet another very topical webinar. Today's webinar will focus on water, hygiene and sanitation in South Africa, and how we make sure that we leave no one behind. Just this week again, we heard of pit toilets in schools across South Africa and what a learner has been put through to retrieve a principal's cell phone from a pit toilet. It seems to be a never-ending conversation that we keep having across communities, across schools, and across the country. And for that reason, I'm so glad that we have 3 speakers today that will help us understand how we can play a part in making sure that we leave no one behind. They will give us perspectives from the international agenda's point of view, our own national initiatives, and how we can drill down to support schools in their plight at a very local level. So my 3 speakers today, first is Mark Bannister, who comes from a very chemical engineering background and has 31 years of experience in the water and sanitation sector. Mark has worked both in the government space as well as in the NGO space, and we're very excited to have him today to share from a more macro perspective what water and sanitation is, the state of that in South Africa, and how we work towards achieving Sustainable Development Goal 6 in the country, which is clean water and sanitation. We're also joined today by Irshan Higu, who is an expert in community upliftment and is a qualified plumber. He's also a facilitator of community engagement and community stakeholder engagement, and an activist. Irshan has over 22 years of experience in the plumbing industry, and he uses this to change the thinking within communities around the water and sanitation sector. And finally, we are joined by Parthy Chetty, who has a strong background in the education system and has also played an integral role in setting up ICT studies at schools. Parthy is currently the executive director of the Eskom Expo for young scientists, and work with schools across the country to look at how we can use science to improve, for example, the quality of water and our sanitation at schools. But before we get into that, let me just quickly go through some of the house rules for the day, as per usual. So just the house rules, only our panelists and facilitators' videos and sound will be switched on. But because some of us are going through some load shedding at the moment, we will keep our videos off as panelists and the facilitator, just to make sure that we don't cram the bandwidth. All the attendees can then engage via the chat box in the Q&A session. We will take all of the 3 presenters first and then have a quick Q&A session right at the end. So please, if there is a question that you would like to ask while one of the presenters are presenting, just put it in the chat box or in the Q&A section and we'll come back to it. The webinar will be recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel afterwards. It's going to be shared live on Facebook as we speak right now. So without taking too much time and without further ado, Mark, I would like to welcome you to the stage and ask you to share your experiences from a very macro level within the water and sanitation space, and how South Africa is leading, or what we are doing as a country to achieve SDG 6. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Cindy, and thank you everybody for the opportunity. It's really great to be here, and it's great to be able to share my story with SDG 6. Just checking that you can see the screen. I'm putting it into presentation mode now.
I can see your screen, Mark. Just put it in presentation mode. There we go.
There we go. Wonderful. Again, once again, thank you very much indeed. I'm Mark Bannister. I'm the Chief Engineer within the Department of Water and Sanitation in Pretoria. And besides my normal day-to-day engineering duties, I'm responsible for driving the SDG 6 program within the country. And so I'm going to just talk to you a little bit about the SDGs and how they fit into the work which is being done. If you remember, we had the Millennium Development Goals, which ended in 2015, which are very high-level goals that stretch for 15 years, and we did okay as a country in that. But because of the success of the MDGs, the United Nations, who are the owners of the or the custodian of the SDGs, they introduced the Sustainable Development Goals, which started in 2016. And we kind of basically evolved from 8 targets with the MDGs into 17 targets with the SDGs. And they are due to be completed by 2030. We're already 4 years in, and we've still got a way to go. The SDGs have been developed looking at various different areas which are listed here. Of the 17 SDGs, number 6 is for the clean water and sanitation, but there's a host of other development areas which the SDGs are focusing on. One of which I think is of interest here is the goal number 4, which is quality education. And then also of interest is the environmental goals on the right-hand side for climate action, life below water and life on land. That's 13, 14, 15 in particular. Each of these are headed by different government departments. Some, like the Department of Environment, actually have 3 or 4 goals that they're responsible for. With the Department of Water, we're just responsible for number 6. Department of Education is driving number 4. And obviously that looks at the whole spectrum of education. It looks at the classrooms that are available to the students. It looks at the curriculum. It looks at all sorts of different components, including water and sanitation. And I'll come to that a little bit later on in terms of how we interact with the Department of Education, Department of Environment in particular, to try and support their objectives. So of the 17 SDGs, SDG 6 is for water and sanitation, which is ensuring availability and sustainability management of water and sanitation for all. There's 1 goal, there's 8 targets and 11 global indicators that we have to report on to the United Nations every 3 years. I'm just going to, my little boy is in the background. Can you just go for a second? Thank you. Home lockdown is showing now. Okay, so then within the SDG 6, we have actually 8 targets that we have to drive. You can see them in front of me there, but SDG 6.1 is focusing on safe drinking water for all. SDG 6.2 is equitable sanitation for all, but bearing in mind that this is really focusing on household sanitation. And I'm just going to pause a little bit on sanitation because I think it's of key to this particular platform. From the MDGs to the SDGs, we're now measuring additional criteria. So, for example, now with the SDGs, we're monitoring fecal sludge management and also health and hygiene in terms of hand washing facilities at the various facilities, which wasn't done in the MDGs. With safe drinking water, also, we were just looking at the distance, the RDP level of service, which is 200 meters from people's houses. But now we're actually looking at the quality of the water as well, and also the downtime that people experience in terms of days per year without water when the system's down and they don't get any supply. So there's additional things that we're using the General Household Survey with Stats SA to kind of monitor progress in that regard. Obviously, water quality is also key. That focuses more on the rivers and the dams and the lakes that we have. And so that's obviously of interest from an environmental perspective. We've got water use efficiency, which is again about how we use our water. In South Africa, on average, we're using about 237 liters of water. Sorry, I've got my numbers wrong way around there. 273 liters of water per person per day, whereas the world average is 173. So in this water scarce country that we've got, we are really using considerably more water than the rest of the world. 6.5 is integrated water resource management. I won't focus too much on that. 6.6 is protecting the ecosystem. Obviously, in the work that's being done in water and sanitation services, the ecosystem is central to making sure that everything is done to the benefit and not the detriment of the environment. So that kind of focuses on that. And then we've got international cooperation, and we have 6.B, community participation, to ensure that the communities are involved right from the concept to the completion and operation and maintenance of projects that we implement. I want to show you this picture because what's really, really key, and I'm sure this goes without saying, but of those 17 SDGs, every single one has a water and sanitation component that needs to be addressed. So I mentioned with education, obviously a school is not complete without water and sanitation facilities at the school. The same with clinics and health. And so we've developed a mechanism to try and engage with the other SDGs in a more structured and formal way. So in the case of SDG 4 with education, it's being driven by the Department of Education in its whole entirety. But the water and sanitation component needs to be addressed. And the Department of Education is required to, through this process, inform us of their requirements of water and sanitation in the sector, which will then be taken back to SDG 6 and translated into actions and programs on the ground to actually turn ideas into something physical and tangible. And I'll show you how that's done in just a moment. But that's why our work is really kind of cut out, because we're not just focusing on the one SDG 6, we're actually looking at all of them. And this is a first on the continent in terms of our approach, which we're very proud about, and we're making good in-ground into what we're supposed to achieve. The way we do achieve this, within just focusing back on SDG 6 again, we had to structure ourselves in a very efficient manner. And the way we did that was to take the 8 targets that were given to us by the United Nations, and then we actually developed 8 task teams, which is, I don't know whether you can see my cursor, but the task teams are there on the kind of horizontal blocks midway down the slide there. So, for example, when it comes to 6.2 sanitation, we've got a task team for 6.2, which is headed by a sanitation expert. And then they have brought in other specialists for different components like health and hygiene, like fecal sludge management, for example, and other areas to provide support towards achieving that particular goal, so that particular target. We've done the same on the environmental side. We've done the same on water quality, right through the different 8 targets. But we realized that there's also cross-cutting issues that need to be addressed. So we brought in 3 cross-cutting task teams. We've got on the left here, research and innovation, who support the other 8 targets. They are the ones that developed the paper relating to the interlinkages with the other 16 SDGs. And they've identified the kind of low-hanging fruit, which will benefit the success of SDG 6, but also the success of the other SDGs. And we're busy putting that into implementation now with a new task team, which is going to drive that. We've got 2 other cross-cutting task teams. We've got sector support and coordination. they obviously liaise with the sector. They've got developed a website, which I'll show you just now, where you can get all the information you need to know about SDG 6. And when the COVID disappears, they're going to be doing roadshows as well to try and bring the sector on board. But to complement that, in the bottom there in the middle, under water sector, we developed the Water and Sanitation Sector Leadership Group, which is represented by all sector components, whether it's national government, whether it's private sector. There's a big NGO and civil society component, agriculture, mining, etc. And they are, we meet every quarter, but basically they turn the gaps that we identify in the targets and take it away to their own part of the sector to influence change, to influence the development of operational plans and business plans, and to turn again the gaps into positive actions that can close those gaps. And then every year we actually come together and meet to see how far we've progressed. We actually meet every quarter, but there's a report which is put together at the end of the year to actually quantify that progress. What I want to show now is that some of you may have heard of the National Water and Sanitation Master Plan, which was launched by the Minister back in November 2019. The Master Plan is one of the vehicles which is being used to translate the gaps of SDG 6 into the projects and programs on the ground. This is called the kind of Bible of the water and sanitation sector, because every stakeholder, every municipality, water service authority, water board, anybody involved in water and sanitation has to align themselves with this plan. And volume 3 of the plan has something like 2,500 projects and programs which need to be implemented to achieve the 2030 goal. They share the same goal. It's aligned with the SDG 6 for obvious reasons. Now, those 2,500 projects and programs are reviewed on a regular basis. And what we do to update the master plan is follow a process which is shown here. You can see the months of the year on the top there. If we look at the top part first, in January, all the task teams have included the cross-cutting task teams there as well. So we've actually got 11 task teams in total. First of all, they're responsible for developing the reports to the United Nations, but also our own internal reports as well, because the United Nations measures every 3 years. We measure every month and every year where we consolidate. And we do that by means of this column here in this December, which is a gap report. And every target task team produces a gap report in December, which shows the criteria of their indicators, what they need to measure, and what the gap is for that particular year. And then at the end of the year, we produce another gap report to see whether that gap is closed or increased. Hopefully it's closed. But that gap report then informs the National Water and Sanitation Master Plan. So in the yellow box on the right of the gap reports, that's where we sit down with the master plan team and say, right, we've got these projects, we want to implement them. Some may be existing, but they need to be modified. Some may be new and need to be incorporated into the master plan. And ultimately then the volume 3 is revised every year so that the sector can align themselves accordingly. So that's where we translate gaps into actions. At the bottom there relates to the other 16 SDGs which I spoke about. And the process that we've got is that we're going to have gap reports from all the other 16 SDGs, specifically about water and sanitation. And then we take those on board and inform the master plan to update what is required to ensure that the necessary water and sanitation infrastructure is provided to give services to the schools. Obviously, what's inside the boundary of the school in terms of water and sanitation is like a household. That's the responsibility of the school. But you have to have services brought to the boundary of the school where it's applicable. Just to look at progress, you know, the SDG program is running very, very well compared to any other country on the continent, and also internationally. It's got some special interest and recognition from the United Nations in terms of what we're doing. And but the SDG program is not responsible for implementation. It influences implementation, but it's up to everybody in this meeting and everybody outside of this meeting who is involved in water and sanitation or uses facilities and plans for facilities to actually close those gaps. So if we look at just a couple of them, for example, 6.1 and 6.2, you can see that this is over the last 3 years. We are progressing. The blue column, the red column, the green column, they're all going up, but we have to achieve 100% by 2030. So we're going very, very slow. And at this rate, we won't reach the target. So there are other plans outside of this which are being developed, and ways to, different methodologies of working so that we can try and improve the way we're doing things. You can see on the environment one, there isn't actually a target because they're only measuring the change per year rather than actually giving a quantifiable figure to reach. Others have. But you can see with this one, for example, 6.4.2, that's slightly different because we've got in the country 41% non-revenue water. That means 41% of water is being lost to leakage in the ground. And we're trying to get to 15% by 2030, which is the blue column. But we're not doing very well. It's going higher at the moment. We're getting more leakage now than we did the previous year. And so there's a lot of interventions, particularly on a municipal side, to actually address that. But we all have a responsibility to do that. We need to make sure that when there's leakage, then we fix it, particularly in toilets and systems like that. On the website, which I'll introduce you to now, you can get specific details about every single target within SDG 6. I've shown this one as an example in terms of sanitation. And again, it reflects on household sanitation rather than school, but it just shows you the figures that we're increasing by each year, which is not a lot on what we have to get to. This is actually a school toilet that I personally was involved in the construction when during my umbrella trust days as an NGO, which were splendid days. Similarly, on the SDG 6.6 on the environment, it talks to the various different components that they have to measure each year. So you can see here that the groundwater level, for example, there's been a 12% reduction in groundwater over that period of 2015 and 2020. Similarly for estuary water quantity, that has changed over the last couple of years. I'm just giving you these as an example, because then if you go to the website, which is connected to our Department of Water website, you can find it easy there under programs. Then every single target will have a breakdown of what it's all about, what it's trying to achieve, what the progress is made to date. You can look at the gap reports and see what is important to yourselves and how you can influence change. So I encourage you to have a look at that website. There's a lot of really great information there for you to review. There's the annual progress report, which tells you an overview of everything over the last couple of years, etc. But as a final word, just put those key messages up there in terms of what we've been doing well and what we need. But the Water Sanitation Sector Leadership Group task team is an opportunity for you to also make more specific inputs. And I'd be welcome to invite you there to participate at some of our meetings if you have particular inquiries about certain targets that you want to influence. So that's an opportunity as well. It's a sector forum, and obviously people here are within the sector, so there's opportunities to make change there. I'm conscious of the time, so yeah, I apologize if I went over a little bit, but basically that's my contact details should you want to know more. And there is the Department of Water and Sanitation web address in which you or within which you'll find the SDG 6 program. With that, I would like to thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to your questions later. Back to you,
Great.
Cindy. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Mark. I think it's important for us to also understand the kind of like overarching structures and the systems that are put in place that all of us basically feed into, and the national plans that is reporting into all of the international agendas. So thank you very much for that very technical overview, Mark, and I'm sure that Ihsan and Parthy's presentations will basically let us filter into that. And so our next speaker, Ihsan, I would like to ask you to share your presentation, but just a little bit, not taking anything away from Ihsan, but I'm very excited also about his presentation, particularly looking at skills and professional development and personal development of communities across the country and the work that he's been doing at this national program that he's going to tell us all about. So Ihsan, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm going to close my video screen and then just share my screen with you.
That's perfect. Thank you. And just a reminder for all of our attendees, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A chat box and as well as the chat to put your questions for all of our guest speakers today, and I will field them to them as soon as all of them has finished presenting. Over to you, Ihsan.
Thank you, Cindy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very, very honored to be here this afternoon on the same platform with some great speakers. Today, I'll be talking to you about an introduction to plumbing that has been a partnership between Lexwell Africa and the Department of Water and Sanitation. Our objective to this is to create opportunities and develop the talent of the youth and especially women in our communities. Our mission is we believe in sustainable empowerment, skills development within community geographical area, and give people purpose. We also believe that our program will eradicate and the need for all that is negative and allow people to once again thrive. And our vision finally is to create a sustainable income for the unemployed. And by planting seeds of hope, I think that ties in with SDG number 8. We're trying to just create that unlocking the entrepreneurial skills within our communities. The basic plumbing skills program consists of 5 modules. One, we've taken the civic local government videos, and it's an educational program based on how we interact with government. For example, when we talk about what is municipal services, we ask them the simple questions as what services must the municipality provide, where they get their money from, how do they spend their budget, and why is it important for people to pay their municipal services? I think from an educational perspective, once we know how to engage with government, we won't be burning down infrastructure unnecessarily. So we will know the correct transition of finding out or querying when we have queries in our community. The second module is on replacing a tap washer. Here, the attendee will physically take a tap apart and reassemble it. Module 3 is replacing and maintaining key components of a toilet system. Module 4, how to repair a burst pipe. And then module 5 is the 10 easy steps to registering your own business. Now, I think that the 5th module is quite important. We establish a WhatsApp group so that they support all the time. So when the attendee is in the community trying to repair a tap or a system or a burst pipe, there will always be a support backup from myself that will be guiding them. And if I can just at this point establish that we are not educating attendees to become plumbers, It is merely an introduction to the skill. And if they want to take it further, we will then engage with colleges and then guide them to an appropriate college so that they can further their studies. And part of Module 5 is creating a database where the attendees will have first choice, will be looked at first if there is a maintenance, preventative maintenance programs within the municipality, and the community to assist the municipality in capital and maintenance projects. And in conjunction with municipality, water and sanitation, the person by default becomes an ambassador. Part of the practicals would be that after each phase of a workshop, the attendee heads to a community building flag by the local municipality where maintenance is required. And this way the attendee now then physically fixes a tap or a toilet or a burst pipe. They've now done the practicals and also contributed positively to the community. This slide was just done on Friday. We were in Gugulethu and we literally showed 51 ladies how to repair a tap and a system. You can see the learners are quite eager, hands-on approach. You know, I like to get involved with all of these initiatives in our communities. Then on this slide, we had with Department of Water and Sanitation and Lixel, we had seeing that it was Water Month and Women's Month, and we did this whole female toiletry drive. For this particular month, we were able to hand out 131 sanitary packs. You'll see at the bottom of the screen over there, it consisted of sanitary towels, roll-on soap, and some pocket tissues. And there was a little booklet as well on how to save water. On this slide, we were in the Beaufort West community, where we did a water saving awareness program. And this is where it started for me. It started with creating water saving awareness for communities, but it evolved very quickly as to how I as an individual can make a difference once we have left those communities. This pre-DIY program was instated in November of 2019 at the Brooklyn Library in Cape Town. Due to COVID-19, the program has stopped, and we're hoping to reinstate the program very soon. This is quite close to me. The gentleman in the grey top, his name is Parthy Chetty, and he attended the full program. Thabit was a drug addict for 18 years, and together with the help of the program and a few phone calls, we were able to assist him in getting employment at the City of Cape Town as a janitor at the local clinic. So he's one of the, I'm still in contact with Thabit. We still communicate daily on how to repair certain items at the clinic. So the Department of Water and Sanitation has initiated a community forums in 7 municipalities in the Western Cape. In this slide, we've got the Matsikama forum. You'll see there's a gentleman in a wheelchair. We don't discriminate. Anyone is able to come and join us. And let me tell you, this guy repaired a tap quicker than the able-bodied persons that was at this training session. On this slide, we've got the Cedarburg Municipality Forum. You'll see as I go through the slides that there's a lot of women that is involved in the plumbing programs. And for me, with gender-based violence on the increase and on the rise, we find that it is females will feel much more comfortable if a woman would come into their homes and repair a tap as to a strange man. So I think the opportunity for females right now to embrace the plumbing world is right now. As I said in the previous slide, once we have done a phase, we go into the community and we actually do repairs. This is in the Cedarburg municipality, where the municipality has flagged the outside toilets, and we had a few taps repaired. The Oudtshoorn municipality on this slide, they're also quite active. We involved with Trapsoetjies in this region as well, Water is of the absolute scarcity there. So we enforcing water saving awareness constantly in the Oudtshoorn municipality. We had the Deputy Mayor of Prince Albert, Linda, joining us for a session. You'll see at the back there, that is the Department of Water and Sanitation business chart. So a lot of people think that water should be free, but once they've gone through this chart, they actually realize that the water that ends up in our dams are unpurified water. And once it goes through the purification system and they look at the reticulation supplied by the municipalities, they understand finally why they need to pay for water. In this slide, we've got the Prince Albert, still the Prince Albert Municipality Forum, but you'll see they've got little boxes. My colleague, Andrew Camphausen, who initiated the actual program, also initiated the toolbox. So the toolbox is empty. There's no tools in the boxes, but there's a reason behind it. We, in fact, filled up the toolboxes with dry fruits, dry foods, chips, cool drinks, some peanuts, dry fruits, to keep the energy levels going while we are in a workshop. But the purpose of the toolbox is that it's a start for them. So they need to actually go and purchase a shifter, a water pump pliers, a screwdriver, and so forth. This was in this slide, we did some practicals down this township. We had the outside toilet pump taps repaired. The Kanaland Mayor, Magdalene Barry, also came to pop in and say hello. Again, in the slide, you'll see the community forum members. We took a quick pic. All of these, I must say, was before COVID-19, hence there's no masks in these pictures. Here, these ladies assembled a tap successfully. And the one with the water pump pliers, she's actually doing some maintenance in the Kanaland community. This is the Plettenberg Community Forum. I think this forum was the most active. We tackled 2 schools in the Bateau area that needed some help with repairing of taps. In the picture here, we've got Malusi Gai, who is the head of communications for Department of Water and Sanitation. This is at the George Forum at the Department of Water and Sanitation offices. This group had some airtime on SABC2 in 2019. The lady in the green scarf was interviewed, and she explained to the public how important this workshop was for her. And it's a national program that we got. Here, some of my colleagues are in the Northwest. And you can see the amount of people that comes out. It is in droves. They are interested. They want to learn. It's important for us to continuously upskilling our people. You know, with the socio-economic challenges that we face daily, personal skill development and actual skill development, that is crucial in eliminating unemployment in our country. So whether I'm doing the training sessions on a weekly basis or on a Saturday morning, if there is anybody in the audience that wants to have some training done, they are more than welcome to drop us a line or a message, and we will come and do training for them. In this slide, in the peak of the water restrictions in Cape Town, we approached Mary Harding. It's a school for disabled children. And this is the Cape Town team, the commercial team that decided to go out there. That's me overlooking that they are doing it correctly. We've assisted the school with water saving devices so that they can save some money on their water bill. And in turn, they gave us a few buses to print our brand on. The tap in the brand is the most water efficient tap in South Africa. It gives you water at 1.9 liters per minute. The Masamani Community Forum, and my colleague Benny Molashley also did an excellent job in upskilling this community. Then we've got some media attention that we found as we went through the program, there was always cameras and people showing interest in the program. But yeah, that is me in a nutshell. Thank you for giving me some time to speak to you about this, and I look forward to your questions later.
Great, thank you so much, Irshan. That's really looking good. There's already some questions about how people can join, where you're rolling it out. I did mention that it is a national program, but we'll give Irshan a little bit more time to explain or to answer some of your questions in the Q&A session. Thank you very much, Irshan. And now we're going to move on to Parthy, who's going to basically tell us about some of the case studies that he's done in some of the schools. And looking at, how we can uplift learners, teachers, and assist them to make sure that their specific situations in terms of water and sanitation can be addressed locally by themselves. So with no further ado, I'll hand over to Parthy.
Thank you very much, Cindy Lee, and thanks to my colleagues for the wonderful, inspiring presentations that keep us on track. In keeping with the topic of water hygiene and sanitation, our focus, when we say leaving no one behind, our focus is starting with the school learners, because we find that the way our education system is operating is that we spend a lot of money investing in our future. It takes at least 12 years of education. It costs government about 1 million rand per learner to put them through. So we kind of, focusing on that lower end. And what my colleagues have also presented, we do complement each other. So it's not just one or the other, but we all need to coexist. I'm gonna share with you 2 quick examples to put it into perspective, the role of our learners in the future of our country. I'm going to start with one of our early winners. She also represented South Africa with the Department of Water and Sanitation. In 2002, at the age of 16, Claire Reid won at Eskom Expo for young scientists. That gave her the opportunity to also represent South Africa at the International Stockholm competition, where she won the junior prize. She then went on to win the Women in Water for Scientific Innovation, awarded by the previous president, Thabo Mbeki. She was also the winner of the SAB Foundation Social Innovation Awards. She was the EMEA, which is Europe, Middle East, and Africa, winner of Global Social Venture Competition. She spoke alongside Richard Branson in London, and she was also a closing speaker alongside Bill Gates in Washington. Now we move on to another learner, another young learner as well. Kiara Nirgin, in 2015, not too long ago. At the age of 16, she won at Eskom Expo. She then entered a project into an international competition hosted by Google. She was flown to California as part of the worldwide finalists. It's quite also interesting what she's done. So she developed a solution to combating drought with a low-cost, biodegradable, super-absorbent polymer made out of orange peels. Now, a few years back, one city was close to day 0. Currently, we have another city that may be heading towards day 0. So water conservation and using water and being creative in managing water is absolutely vital. So her project won her the the grand prize in Google's Science Fair Community Impact Award. And she won about 600,000 rands in that award. She landed a book deal. She delivered a TED Talk. TED Talks are delivered by world leaders in their fields. And here's a young South African girl still in school delivering that. She was featured in both the Cosmopolitan South Africa's 19 under 19 roundup and the new wave of disruptors in Forbes magazine. And both of these are highly prominent publications. Since 2018, she has attended the prestigious Stanford University as an undergraduate. In 2019, she spoke at the United Nations headquarters on International Women's Day. To quote Chiara, if the cure to cancer is in a young girl's mind, if she doesn't have the opportunity to learn STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, we're not going to get the solution. We need to give girls the necessary resources to create change. Now, Chiara's quotation is also very, very appropriate to solutions in water management and conservation. And in Ikshan's earlier presentation, we see a lot more women attending these courses. And here are two young South African girls speaking on the world stage. Now, I'm just going to move on to why I'm sharing these stories, these feel-good stories. Part of our solutions to the many problems that's facing us today in the water management crisis, which is also a worldwide phenomenon, as well as to future challenges and solutions, lies within being innovative. So I would like to focus my presentation on the innovation and why it is important and how we could apply it to the water management. So in a nutshell, innovation is a process and also the outcomes of creating something new, which is of value. So it has to be meaningful for people to want to use these innovations. Africans need to be creators as well as innovators in order to make Africa and South Africa globally competitive and solve our own water problems. Water is one of the only natural resources that I can recall, as somebody could correct me. It's one of the only resources that is not exported or imported like any other product that is made anywhere in the world, and vice versa. We make stuff when we export. But water is one of the things that does not get imported or exported. Sure, we do share common rivers. We do share reservoirs with our neighbors. But you'll never find us exporting water to Taiwan or the UK, Europe, or anywhere else. So we need to conserve this most precious natural resource, which is literally a lifeblood. We need to start at school level. Now, why is it important? It's because this is an important inflection point in the life of young learners, where we need to stimulate and to support the young learners' inquisitive minds. And matched with their natural playfulness and the energy to experiment, it results in innovation from a different perspective to that of us adults. We've been trained a certain way, and we are set in our ways. We are too scared to experiment within reason. But the young learner is quite comfortable to do this. And some of the innovations that they've come up with, like the two girls I've shared, Claire Reed has developed her own company marketing real farming. Chiara is studying in the USA. We've had many others that have come through, and it's because of their inquisitive mind. So we create a platform for the innovation to actually thrive. And we now need to harness that innovation and creativity and channel it in specific areas in the water industry or in the overall water management. Now, currently, many entities in South Africa are doing a lot in the school environment, in water environment, conservation, you name it, it's being done. But it is what we called a shotgun approach, a spray and pray approach. And if you look at the image, you'll find that not many of the arrows are hitting the targets. Now, I've had conversations with a few entities. I've had conversations with universities. I've had conversations with industrial research bodies like the CSIR, a few government departments. And the one question I always ask them, how do you go about doing these things? So they tell me, it's basically a spray and pray approach. And I explained, as Expo, what we do is what is called a sniper approach. The difference is that we identify the targets using set criteria that we've developed so that with partners, and we have many partners on board, with partners, we can have a higher impact in hitting the targets. So we don't just spray and pray. And some of the challenges they've discussed with me is that every year we target 15 to 20 schools in this vicinity, that vicinity, but they have no idea as to the impact they're having or how many of the learners are going into university. So this is the role that we play, is we need to start sharing our expertise in how are we doing these things and how are we going to work jointly to address some of the, well, a lot of the huge challenges we have in the water industry. The limited success that they have is because the type of measure and the lack of knowledge in the environment. So it's tough. It's very, very difficult. And we'd like to work jointly with all these partners to achieve joint success. Now, one of the ways in which we do this, we harness all, well, we've developed a strategy or a tool called the STEM Maturity Guide. And I'm quickly going to show you exactly how the STEM Maturity Guide works. Firstly, we focus on the school STEM readiness. Now, for example, you cannot go and teach IT in a school with no electricity and no computers. Where are these learners going to do these things? And this is exactly what is happening in some environments. Secondly, we ensure that the management, the school management, which we call the STEM management environment, is conducive. For example, is there staff development in this field? If you go and train a bunch of teachers on how to use ICT, for example, to enhance the quality of teaching, but every day at 2:30, the computer room is locked because the principal does not want anything to happen to the computers, you'll find that it is not a conducive environment. No matter how much you teach, it's pouring water down the drain. And this is how we identify and work in the environment. The third thing is the teaching and learning culture. If you want to change the way learners learn, your change agent is a teacher. And if the teacher is not open to changing or being a very open-minded person, you're not going to make any difference in that. And the fourth component is the STEM policy implementation. For example, in an environment, school environment, are there workspaces for children to do science, either in a laboratory, in a classroom, outside of the school environment? Is it supported? And again, do they lock up the classrooms at 2:30 and the learners have no place to go and do these experiments? Now, we focus, what brings all this together is this is a learner-centered approach, not a teacher-driven approach. So we put the learner at the center and we see how best to support the learner. And we find by using our STEM maturity guide, which can be applied to any school, every one of these components must be ticked in order for us to interact with the school. And that is how we reach this level of success. Each of these components has 3 levels. For example, if you look at the STEM readiness, we have schools at the entry level, at an adoption level, and an adaptation level. I'm not going to go into too much of detail on this, but the audience is welcome to engage with me, and I can explain in detail how these things work and how we achieve the level of success. So the last thing is, when all these come together, this is when we achieve success. With any one of them missing, it's like missing one wheel on the car. You can have the most fantastic driver, you can have the most fantastic car, but with one wheel missing, that car is going nowhere. So you have to look at this holistic environment to be able to support all our water management issues in the country. Now, the school system certainly plays a role. Every country is critical. And what's important is that from basic education, learners need to expand their learning paths outside of the classroom. Now, also, not every scientist looks like this. Not every learner will need to have this kind of access. What we find is that some of the best, now why I'm focusing on these is we want to teach learners. Learners are inquisitive, so we talk about inquiry learning, where they develop research-based projects. So what they learn in the classroom, they go outside and they apply it. And these are learners. All of these are water-related research projects that they're doing using the inquiry method. It's exciting, it's a different environment, and it's a concept about learners voting with their feet. When they go to a certain environment by choice, they are guaranteed to be successful. Their motivations are a lot higher. The levels of achievement are a lot higher as compared to sitting in the classroom and listening to a teacher. So we change that environment and we create this kind of highly motivated learners who will make a difference in their lives. Now, these are examples of scientists. These are all scientists in the field. But the learners don't realize that. They feel you have to be in a white coat in a lab. But we can explain, we can actually motivate them that they are scientists. And with Expo type of activities or inquiry learning, every learner is a scientist and we help them to achieve their potential. An absence of a science lab does not exclude any learner from doing a research project. They could do research anywhere. And the key is to get our learners interested in research projects, which is how we will shape our future by investing in our learners. So there's a lot more detail in how we do all of these things, which I don't have the time to share now, but I'll be glad to engage at a later stage in how we are able to achieve this level of success. So I just thought I'll share at a high level how the education system in class and outside of the classroom is supporting our greater, and we spoke of SDG 6. You know, it's quite important that how we could harness this kind of potential in that direction. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you very much. That was quite inspiring. And I've seen some questions come through, particularly for each of the different speakers. And what I will do is I'll just basically field them now to all of you. But to all of our webinar participants, to all of our webinar guests, please put your questions into the Q&A session or section or on the chat section. I've got a first question for Mark. And there was that one diagram that you showed us about how all of the SDGs are linked together. And one of the questions that came up was, how do the different government departments work together to actually achieve SDG 6? And if you can refer us to a specific case study where different departments have worked together. For example, you mentioned that, you know, the education department, particularly responsible for schools, but also the water and sanitation department, particularly, you know, involved or responsible for water and sanitation throughout the country. And we know that there's obviously certain designations and restrictions, but how do the departments work together to actually achieve the SDGs, and particularly SDG 6? Mark, that question is for you.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Can I just start by congratulating the other two speakers for a very inspiring, or two very inspiring presentations. It was really great to see the success stories there, so thanks for that. A very good question. You know, the Stats SA is the responsible for coordinating all the SDGs in the country. So they coordinate regular sessions where all SDG representatives come along and meet. But what they don't do is they don't coordinate the water and sanitation component. So we started the process last year by developing the research report through the Water Research Commission to see how best we could do that. And then we had a workshop in July last year, where we invited all the departments responsible for SDGs. There was not a huge amount of participation from other government departments, and this is one of the challenges we're trying to address now. It's only in this last month that we've now developed a task team to proactively go and knock on the doors of the various departments and say, look, we've got this process which has been developed. We need your participation. We need your support to give us your needs in terms of water and sanitation so that we can take them forward. Now, when it comes to education, like I mentioned, in a household, the municipality is responsible to deliver water and sanitation services to the boundary of your property. And the same applies for the school. So the municipality will provide or should provide water to the boundary with a meter, but what happens inside is the responsibility of the owner. And it's the same with the schools. So when SDG 4 Department of Education does their planning and they look at school sanitation and water, they need to look at every school and say what's actually needed. Maybe there's no services provided to the boundary, in which case we can take that gap and put it into the National Water and Sanitation Master Plan so that the Water Service Authority takes us on board to do just that. But again, the school may have no infrastructure inside its boundary, but then still has water at the boundary. Then they need to actually take that on board themselves to provide that infrastructure. So yeah, we're hoping that this year, now that we've got our own house in order in terms of the SDG 6 program, and having started or to look at what's happening in the rest of the SDGs last year and seeing where the gaps are, we're proactively going forward. And we hope by the end of this year that we'll receive a gap report from the Department of Education saying, these are our needs, this is what we require, and then we can try and translate that into tangible projects on the ground. But I'm very pleased with the question, very, very, very interesting. Thank you.
Just to follow up with that, Mark, some of the questions has always also been with regards to the targets for SDG 6 and how contextually relevant they are for a country like South Africa, where, you know, for example, we still have pit toilets at schools. So in terms of the actual relevance of the targets of SDG 6, are they achievable as for us as a country, and can we actually do them based on the context of the South African landscape?
Another good question, thank you. At the beginning of the SDG process, through Stats SA, we were given the opportunity to what's called domesticate the targets and domesticate the indicators relating to those targets, so that we could develop them in the South African context, because what's relevant in South Africa may not be relevant in Brazil, and vice versa. So, for example, with 6B, the community participation, in terms of the criteria given to us by the United Nations, we've already scored 100%, because by default, every water service authority has to have a policy in place to encourage community participation. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't measure the performance of the involvement of communities. Do they actually get involved? Yes, they might have a policy in place, but it doesn't actually speak to whether it's actually happening. So we're developing another indicator for 6B, which will measure the performance of the involvement of communities from concept to completion. And that's also a first which South Africa's taken the lead, and that's going to be replicated around the world when it's successful. So the same applies to all the others. In terms of things like pit toilets, obviously there's norms and standards related to what is applicable and what's not applicable, both in the household and the school situation. So for example, in the household, a VIP toilet, the ventilated improved pit routine, is the basic level of service. Anything below that, whether it's just a regular pit or open defecation is obviously not allowed at all. And the norms and standards are being considered through the Department of Education to try and relook at the basic level of service to see what's applicable. I hope that answers your
Thank
question.
you so. Yes, I hope the participants also are satisfied with those answers. Thank you so much, Mark. Irshan, I've got one for you in terms of the community forums. So are those already established? Do you work through the municipality with regards to that? Or how are those forums that you work with formed and constituted?
Yeah, so the community forums are already a functioning body in the various municipalities. However, there is 2 new forums that we are trying to activate, the one in Worcester and one in Robertson. So you would have seen in the presentation, I would have slides of a forum, but also outside of the forum, a community-based NGO that requires assistance for skills upliftment or personal development. We get involved with them as well. But if there isn't a forum, I believe that every community should have a forum. There should be an ambassador for water and sanitation in every community. Every municipality should have one. Just to continue the water saving awareness and create education awareness around that. But the forums can be established. 10 people can establish a forum, but currently they are all already established in the Western Cape.
Okay, perfect. And Irshan, I'm just thinking of, some of the departmental programs, the EPWP programs, the CWP programs, and particularly some of those participants that are stationed at schools. Would it also not be, beneficial for us to look at training, particularly those CWP and EPWP participants, who are mostly women, to look at fixing taps and systems of toilets in schools particularly?
Absolutely. The more people that we can get across to or touch, the better for the country as a whole. When you look at a system, for example, and Mark would elaborate on that, it's the single largest or the single product in your household that wastes the most water. So if we can get to as many people as possible and teach them how to repair that without getting in a plumber, I mean, we'll save the country billions of rands at the end of the day. But absolutely, we'd love to get involved with other programs as well. I know that a lot of the NGOs are involved with local government, because those platforms go up for tender. So we are in talks with local government in the Western Cape as to getting involved with the NGOs so that we can reach as much people.
Okay, and then just in terms of the modules, someone also asked us in the chat, what is the kind of duration of those 5 modules? And you did mention in the beginning that it's not necessarily that everybody who goes through these modules start a plumbing business, but also just a little bit about how you actually then support them if they want to further go into plumbing as a profession and to set up a business to service their communities and the municipalities.
Yeah, so with the program, the duration per module is 3 hours. It also depends on the level of the learner on that particular day. And then what I say to all the learners is that they need to understand the rules of engagement. If you go into the community and you want to engage in plumbing, you need to be a qualified plumber. If you want to install new products, if you want to fit a toilet, if you want to fit a basin, you need to be qualified. But the program that Lixel and the Department of Water and Sanitation is introducing is repairing. So maintenance is easy. As to starting of the business, what I'm trying to establish with those forums, Cindy, is that I want to unlock the entrepreneurial skills within our people, and it's plenty there. All they need to, whether they start a little maintenance business or whether they start any form of business, they need to understand the where they can get funding. I think funding is always a crucial part of starting a business, and then obviously it's just the support. So we indirectly teach you how to look after your water, our water, But when you want to go outside of the plumbing field, we still support you. We've got a young 26-year-old lady in King Williamstown who was part of the training program at Teen Challenge. She wants to start a cleaning service, and I helped her with setting up the flyers, setting up the business model for her. But more importantly is she contacted us for that assistance and guidance, and that is what we want. We must be there. We mustn't just talk about what we're going to do. We must be there when the time comes, and you must be able to support the learners.
Absolutely, 100% agree. Thanks, Irshan. And then Parthy, one question for you is the kind of like model that you presented, and you didn't go into detail with regards to the entry of the school, the adoption of the school, and the adaptation. Then it's the one question someone just wants you to like explain a little bit about that. And then the second question is, obviously we do have teachers on the platform today, and how do we get teachers to get their students to, for example, participate in the Eskom Expo, and for them to be exposed to the two role models that you shared their case stories with us today?
Sure, thanks, Cindy. Well, firstly, all schools should encourage learners, because it's part of the curriculum. They've got to do project work, and they can choose, if the creativity is up to the teacher, how to channel that for the learners to do a research project. The other advantage is we've got 13 categories which learners can choose from. So just look at one of the questions about the eco schools and STEM. Is within our categories, there's about 7 of the 13 categories that the eco schools program can fit into. So what we do is learners have, they don't have to work as an entire class unit, because not every learner in the class moves at the same pace. What this allows is those that want to achieve like a gold or silver or bronze work accordingly. Teachers can encourage the learners to firstly visit our website. There's a lot of help, now, especially for the teachers. They may feel overwhelmed. For example, how do they create a learner that goes and speaks at the United Nations, or that speaks along Richard Branson? It's quite easy. You simply have to create that environment, and the learner dictates how well they are motivated and how far they want to go. So even for your teachers, visit our website. Because of lockdown, we've created a whole lot of material where we can support the teacher and the learner directly using online. So we had to learn during lockdown. Normally it's face-to-face, but that didn't work. So the teachers, we've developed a lot of resources. So if the teachers go through these resources, they'll be a lot more empowered, because they will understand exactly what it entails. They can pace themselves, and they can reach out to Expo's help desk. We cover the entire country. We've got 35 regions across the country. So it doesn't matter where you are, there's a region close by. So just reach out, and we can assist you to take you to whatever level you want to reach.
Great, thanks, Parthy. And I mean, like it's like I said in the beginning, it's a never-ending fight that we always have to fight to improve water, both quality and quantity, as well as our sanitation standards at schools and communities. And each of you are doing great work in terms of like contributing to that. Mark, I hope that we are well on the way to achieve all of our 17 goals and their targets by 2030. And that we won't have to push them backwards. I do believe that those goals should be something that we work towards without any timeline or deadline. And just with that, Mark, if I can ask you to, just give a few closing remarks, 1 minute closing remark to all of our panelists to inspire us, to inspire them, and to make sure that we don't give up on this fight to strive for clean water and sanitation across the country.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate the opportunity. Although the graphs show a slow progress at the moment, in some ways that was to be expected. The whole, one of the purposes of this program is to turn things around. So we've seen where the weaknesses are, and there's actions being put in place to accelerate our progress towards 2030. So we're still right at the beginning in terms of reporting. We've only been reporting for 3 years now, and the actions we put in place can take a year or two to take off. But I think I'm very positive. I'm very hopeful that we meet all the targets are there, and I think it's going to be good moving forward. What I will say, like to say as a final word as well, you know, I was at a conference this morning for the Water Research Commission on women in science and innovation, which was very, very inspiring. And it was so great to see from our other two speakers the involvement of women in the programs that are there. And also with Chiara and Claire, so inspiring. And it's nice to know, I mean, Claire was part of the South African Youth Water Prize, which we run every year, and it shows that it reflected her excellence there, and I'm so pleased that she's progressed. But also, you can't see from the picture, but I'm also using a wheelchair, and it was nice to see one of my fellow wheelies in the picture there. You know, 6% of the population have a disability, and they all have great opportunities and skills to offer. So it's nice to know that you could change the tap quicker than anybody else. But please, I'm just encouraging you to continue, obviously, to get the gender balance right, and also to include those with disabilities as well, because they provide such a value to society. Thank you very much indeed for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, and to make sure that we actually are inclusive in our inclusivity programs, which is something that Irshan has shown us today. So last word from you, Irshan, before we close off for the day.
Yeah, again, it's an honor to have been here and share the bit of work that I do in the communities. In closing, I think on what Mark touched regarding the SDG goals, zero hunger is very, very important to me. It's something that we need to eradicate. I believe that we cannot go and sleep at night knowing that somebody's not eating. Very close to my dear colleagues' heart as well, Andy Camphausen, clean water and sanitation. I get that buzz in my ear all the time. And then decent work and economic growth. I think if we will all work together, you know, again, I said to Mark yesterday, I was excited to see him on the panel. So I'm going to have bragging rights for a few weeks. Some of my friends in the plumbing business that I've been on the same platform with Mark. You know, when we work together as this, and I think Parthy's presentation was excellent as well. When you collaborate things like this, and you know, we can make the change. We can make the difference in our country, and it's just a mindset. Sometimes we just got to recondition the way we think about our situation. But every single individual has a positive message to share with the community around them, and they'll make a difference. But again, many thanks for having me on this platform. I really appreciate it.
Great, thank you, Irshan. And also a positive and important contribution to make. Each and every one of us have an important contribution to make, alongside that positive message that we bring. And then I'd just like to go to Parthy to ask him for a closing comment. Really impressed with the work that you do, Parthy, particularly with students. Sometimes all they need is someone to like lift them up and assist them, or give them the platform to change the world.
Sure. Thanks, Cindy. So some of the key things, look, I'm a teacher by profession. I've spent all my life in education. I've worked in government, private sector, NGO. The key thing I will put out there is get the best education you can in a field that you are passionate about. So you don't just get a job. You look forward to waking up and making a difference. Now, to link to the two other speakers about the areas that they're focusing on, we all need to look at integrating and collaborating. And I said, nobody will survive on their own. A key thing, I always talk to partners. There's lots of potential partners. I always ask them, what is important to you and what do you want to achieve? And we then collaborate to achieve that. Because at the end of the day, it's the learners that we are interested in. And we actually have a selfish motive behind that, because these learners who we are trying to teach and provide them with these innovation and entrepreneurship skills and so on, are going to be future leaders, are going to be future inventors of problems, and they're going to be solving problems that don't yet exist. They're going to be using technologies that don't just exist. And basically, they're going to start fixing the earth because we messed it up. Previous generations have messed it up with carbon emission and so on. So we're going to rely on these learners to fix our mess, to put it in a nutshell. So I appeal to everybody in the audience. Let's see how best we can collaborate and make an impact, because investment in our children is an investment in our future. Thank you.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And on that note, also just to mention that this whole webinar was in collaboration with the Department of Water and Sanitation. And we also thank them for their participation and the work behind the scenes that they've put in to get us a wonderful list of speakers today that has basically given us new food for thought, and also look at how we can contribute positively to make sure that we reach all of our sustainable development goals. We also have a short video to show you that the Department of Water and Sanitation has put together. It's just 2 minutes, and after that we will close the webinar for today. So if I can just ask Daniel to share that video for us, please. Thank you very much to everybody who joined our webinar today. Special thanks to the Department of Water and Sanitation, as well as all of our guest speakers today. It was great to be in your presence and have this conversation with you. And we will keep you updated with regards to our next webinar. Please watch all of our social media platforms. And I wish you all a great day further and a great rest of your week ahead. Thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.